In this video, just like the title describes, we're going to talk about all things electricity on our new to us Catboat that we just bought a few months ago. We're going to cover three main topics. The first, we're going to replace the batteries in the boat. Batteries in this boat are very, very old. They need to be replaced. So what is that process like? How do you get the right battery? We're going to go through that. Then the second thing we're going to do is install a solar panel onto the boat so that we can get a little bit of extra energy production and not be so reliant on the inboard diesel. And then the third and final piece is we're going to kind of tie it all together with a super simple and easy to install system that regulates the solar input and also the electricity that comes off of the alternator on the inboard diesel. So we're going to cover those three things, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll have just an appreciation and even a plan if you have like a small boat like this that you want to put a basic solar system that can also pull electricity off of your diesel. It might be a system that works for you. So let's get into it. And on the theme of electricity, we had a really fun adventure last week. We were doing a classic boat regatta here in Miami on the horizon, and we met the owner of another catboat here in Miami. His name was Tom, and he has a 1982 Mystic 20 that he has electrified, meaning he took the engine out, replaced it with an electric motor, and he offered to take us out and show us the boat. So we totally took him up on that offer. Fiona and I went out and met him, and really beautiful boat, beautiful interior, beautiful lines, and he showed us all the engineering, all of the thought that went into the conversion, and then we did a little motor around the harbor. Very, very, very cool. And it's just sort of like one thing I really like about the catboat community is when you meet someone that has a catboat, you're kind of like instantly friends. So that was super inspiring, and it's motivated me to dive into this week's electrical project on our catboat. First step of our project is to assess the current status of the electrical system. So we have this locker here in the cockpit, and here are the batteries that came with the boat. We've got two batteries. One is a starter battery, which is designed to turn over and start the diesel engine. And the other battery is a house battery, which runs all of the internal components, the lights, and so on and so forth. And the two batteries on this are connected with a two-way switch, which is really helpful. So the only downside of these batteries, if you may have noticed, is the dates. So on this boat, this is a 2009 battery. I believe this is a 2006. And depending on when you're watching this video, it may be different times, but today it is 2023. So these are very, very old batteries, definitely past their recommended lifespan. They are still working and probably would continue working into the future, but what I'm concerned about is when they stop working, it could be a really inconvenient time. And you don't want to get stuck in a bad situation on the water and your battery stop working. So I think it's time to service these and replace them. So first step is going to be to take the batteries out. I'm going to label all of the cables so I know where everything went. And then I should get a clearer idea of how the wiring is set up and how we're going to put our new batteries in. All right, we got everything out. We've got the all of the wires nicely labeled so we can keep track of everything. And you get a much better sense of where all the wiring is. We'll talk about this switch and whether or not we're going to use it in a minute. But first, let's talk about the new batteries and how we select new batteries. For those of you that are familiar with our YouTube channel, you may remember that many years ago we built a wooden teardrop camper from a kit from Chesapeake Lightcraft. It was an incredibly fun project, and we've driven that trailer around the country multiple times. We went up to Yellowstone, Nova Scotia. It has tens of thousands of miles on it, and the system that we used to regulate the electricity on that system worked so well. We were so happy with how all the components worked. Literally zero complaints after many abusive years with it. I promised myself if I ever were to put a solar panel alternator regulating system on a small boat, I would just use the same components. So spoiler alert, that's what we're going to do on the catboat. We're going to use that same components and design that are tried and true and proven from our experience on the teardrop camper. Choosing a battery for your boat project, it's a whole wormhole that you can get down, and there's so much information on the internet, it can be pretty overwhelming. So the point of this video section is to just sort of give you an overview of our thought process. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but just to help you out. In general, there's sort of like 4 things that I consider. The first is the most obvious one, is space. You have to have a place to put the battery, and that may limit your options severely. We have a battery tray on the horizon. It has a certain footprint. I really wasn't in the mood to build anything new. So that really defines our working space. If you have very restricted space, that may determine what type of battery system you have to get. Once you've determined your space, the second kind of thing is just looking at what category of battery you're looking for in general. There are like lithium batteries, there's lead acid batteries of different types, and they all have different pros and cons. For us, we ended up going with what's called an AGM battery, which stands for absorbent glass mat. It's the same type of battery we used in the teardrop project. It's non-spillable. It works in a variety of temperatures. It's just sort of like a tried, true, solid, safe battery that's not that expensive, sort of like middle of the road cost. And it's worked really well for us in the teardrop, and so we're just playing it safe and sticking with the same thing. Oftentimes, depending on what systems you're using, a charging system may require your starter battery and your house battery to be the same type. So that's something to consider. And oftentimes it's good practice to get your starter battery and your house battery at the same time so that there's the same age. So you don't have one that's sort of depleting and one that's fresh. It's good to replace them both at the same time. So once you've determined those first 2 things, space and what type, the next thing to think about is capacity. And capacity for your starter battery and your house battery are kind of 2 different things. For your starter battery, you're looking for something that has a lot of cold cranking amps, which is a measure of how much oomph your battery can give. You can think of a starter battery as one that puts a lot of energy out over a short period of time, kind of similar to a car battery, right? You need that thing to start and turn your engine over, but once the engines start, the alternator does the rest of the work. So your engine in your boat will have a cold cranking amperage rating, and it'll have requirements that it needs to start the engine. So you want to make sure you look up that information and select a starter battery that has the appropriate capacity to start your engine safely and consistently. Always good to have a little bit extra, a little bit more than you need, than as opposed to being right at that minimum requirement. For your house battery, it's a different story. Instead of putting a lot of energy out over a short period of time, you're going to be drawing that battery down slowly with your lights, maybe an interior fan, you're playing a stereo or something. You're going to be pulling that electricity slowly. And in general, it's good to have what they call like a deep cycle battery, which is a battery that's designed to have the electricity drawn slowly over a long period of time, and that can be recharged from a deep withdrawal over and over and over again. So a deep cycle battery, and then in terms of how much capacity, how much amp hours of capacity it has, depends on how many components you're running. If you're just going to run like lights and maybe a house fan like we are, you really don't need much of capacity. If you're going to have a microwave and all these, television and all this kind of stuff, you're going to need quite a bit more capacity. So that's an important thing to take into account when you're choosing the size of your house battery. So that's the third thing. Again, the first was size, second is type, third is capacity, and then the fourth one is really the charging rates. So batteries can be charged with certain rates. They have different charging ratings, and you want to know if you're charging off your alternator will be rated for a certain amperage. You want to make sure that amperage is sufficiently matched to the battery that it's charging. Or if you're putting in a system like we are that has a solar system and has certain charging outputs, you want to make sure those charging outputs are matched properly with your battery it's charging. In general, you don't want to be charging a battery at a amperage rating higher than it's rated, or you could have a safety problem. That's sort of the thought process for us. And then there's an easy way to kind of get through all of this is to just work with a company that has great customer service. We worked with a company called Vmax Tanks with getting our battery for the teardrop. Had such a great experience that we're working with them again on this project. Just called up their customer service, laid out the situation, told them about the engine, the boat, showed them a picture of where the batteries had to go, and they gave us just a bunch of recommendations on which batteries would suit our needs. So that's a really good thing to do. Even if you're you're proficient at electronics, it's always good to run it by an expert. Make sure you're not missing anything. And we can't recommend Vmax tanks enough. They've been so great with all of these projects we're doing, and we really, really appreciate their support. Here are our 2 new batteries from Vmax tanks. On the left, we have our starter battery. This is a high cranking, they call it an AGM dual purpose battery. So apparently you can also use this to pull for the house battery if you needed it. It has a really high 800 cold cranking amps, 60 amp hours, 12 volts. Has a really nice built-in handle. It's very easy to move. Looks good, beautiful battery. And then here is our house battery. This is a deep cycle AGM battery, 75 amp hours with a max charging rate of 20 amps, which will be perfect for our solar charger system. And together these should work together perfectly as AGM batteries linked up into the same system. So they look really good. First thing is to just check and make sure they fit down there. I've measured them before we got them and they should fit, but it's always good just to double check. Everything fits nice and snug. We've got these nice battery cases with covers and straps that came with the boat, so wanted to continue using those, and the batteries fit perfect in there. So that's always good. And now it's on to wiring. Before you start any electronics project, I find it really helpful to create a wiring diagram to make sure you really understand what the system is trying to accomplish. So that's what we're going to go through here. We're going to review wiring diagram for the current system on the boat, and then the system we are intending to install and how it works. One note in these diagrams, I'm not including things like fuses and like the gauges of the wire. It's meant just for illustrative purposes to show you how things function. In these first few slides, we're going to be looking mostly at the switch in the center, and you can see we have a few different positions. The switch can be off, we can be switched to battery 1, 2, or a combination, and we're going to kind of work through what these things do. So the first and simplest situation is if the switch is set to off and the engine is off. And in this situation, there's no connection between the boat electronics or either of the batteries, either the house battery or the starter battery. So your lights won't work. The boat is off. Typically with most boats, the bilge pump will be hardwired to the house battery. And the reason for that is even if you have your switch off, you still want the bilge pump to turn on in case it gets flooded, because you'd rather have a boat with a dead battery than a boat that's at the bottom of the harbor. So it's pretty common practice to hardwire that bilge pump into your house battery. In the situation where the switch is off, it's pretty simple. Now let's look at when we switch it on. So if we switch to setting 1 on the switch and we want to start the engine, what's going to happen is now the starter battery is connected to the system. So both the boat electronics and the engine can pull electricity off the starter battery. And this is fine for the boat electronics to do briefly, but if you recall, the starter batteries are usually, they're designed for short bursts of energy. They're not really designed to run things for a long period of time like electronics. So typically what a user would do is you would switch to position 1, and then you would turn the key of your engine to start the engine. And when that's happening, the engine is going to pull electricity off that starter battery. And you can see with the arrows we have here illustrating kind of how that flow of electricity might look like. So you have electricity coming from the starter battery into the engine to help turn it over, start it up. And simultaneously, if you have lights or other electronics in the boat operating, it's going to be pulling electricity off that starter battery as well. As soon as the engine starts, the situation changes though, because now the alternator starts producing electricity and the flow of electricity reverses. So now instead of putting electricity in from the starter battery, the engine's going to put electricity out and start replenishing that starter battery and charging it up, while also providing electricity for your onboard electronics. And this is like exactly how a car works, right? When you turn the engine, when the engine's starting, you're taxing that starter battery, but as soon as the engine starts, it switches and you start charging everything. At this stage, typically what people will do will run the engine for a little bit until they feel like their starter battery is charged up, at which point they will usually switch over to number 2, and that's what we're doing here. This would be your house battery. So now we're connecting in the house battery.
so that the boat electronics can come off of that battery if the engine were off, or in this diagram, the engine is still running. In this case, now we're going to be pulling electricity off the engine and simultaneously using that to run the electronics and also to charge that house battery. Now, if we were to turn the engine off in this scenario, all of the electricity from the boat for the boat electronics would get pulled from the house battery. And this is like a pretty normal workflow, like when people go out on their boat and they're going to go under sail. They usually turn the engine on under option 1 off the starter battery, and then as they let the engine run a little bit to charge that battery back up. As soon as it's charged over, they'll switch over to number 2 and then make sure that's relatively charged, and then at some point they'll turn the engine off when the sails are up, and they'll sail throughout the day running their boat electronics just off the house battery. And the reason this is good is, imagine if you go into an anchorage and you were, say, left like a fan on all night. You're going to deplete your house battery, which is fine because it's isolating and saving your starter battery, which means that in the next morning, even if you kill your house battery, you'll still be able to switch back over to 1, start the engine, and then charge everything up. Where you can get in trouble is if you forget to switch over from 1 to 2, or if you switch to 1 and 2, where you're pulling electricity off both batteries and then you leave something on overnight, you could deplete your starter battery. And that's really kind of the worst case scenario. You don't want to get stranded somewhere. And to illustrate, this is sort of what that 1 and 2 switch looks like. With the engine running, you would be pulling electricity off the alternator, and that would be doing 3 things, both running the electronics and charging the starter battery and the house battery. The downside of this is it's going to charge both batteries at a lower rate because it's splitting all that electricity over different sources, and it's easy to forget to kind of like just leave this on when you get to the anchorage and turn on a fan or lights or whatever, fall asleep, and then you could deplete both. So that's sort of like a concern with this. So there's the reasons that we're going to switch from this system. There's a few. One is I don't trust myself necessarily to forget to do all that switching. That's kind of a minor reason. The more major reason is I want to add a solar panel, and adding a solar panel to this system is complicated with the switch, and you have to have all these different converters to manage the output from the solar panel. And then the most importantly is the quality of the charging that comes off the alternator into the type of battery. So most, like if you look at just like a car battery, a standard lead acid battery, those batteries, when you charge them, they're going to off-gas some gases, some dangerous gases, and they're really not appropriate for inside a boat where you're going to be sleeping. And in our Catboat, the batteries are in the same environment where we're sleeping. So I'd rather not have those standard batteries. I'd rather have a safer battery like an AGM battery that's not going to put off those dangerous gases. The downside of AGM batteries is they need a more regulated voltage to charge. You can't just give it a couple, 13, 14 volts and expect it to charge well. You have to give it a sort of complicated voltage signal that changes over time in order for the battery to charge quickly and to maintain its health over a long period of time. So that's the main 3 reasons we're switching over to the CTEK system. And now let's look at what that looks like. So CTEK system here, a little bit different. And the primary function of what it does is it splits our starter battery and house battery and it keeps them separate. And it also enables us to incorporate a solar panel into the system very easily. So the first situation is, we'll keep it really simple. Let's imagine the engine is off and we're sailing and it's a sunny day and we have our solar panel pulling that energy from the sun. The CTEK system is going to pull that energy, it's going to regulate it and put out a nice clean charging signal to our house battery, which is going to allow us to keep that battery charged up even if we're sailing, even if we're at the mooring. We're always going to be pulling out energy from that solar panel. We don't have to turn the diesel on all the time to charge the battery. So that's a really, really nice system, and it's very easy to wire up. It has a built-in solar charger in the system, so you literally just want to run a wire, a fuse. It's like super duper simple. Now things get more complicated but also cooler once you start running the engine. So if we imagine the engine is running or the engine is starting, just like we had before, the engine is going to pull that electricity off the starter battery just to turn the engine over, get it going. But as soon as the engine starts running and the alternator starts putting out electricity, the CTEK is going to come into action in really cool ways. So in this situation, imagine we're going to have our starter battery partly depleted, and we're going to have our house battery partly depleted, and we have our solar panel giving some energy from the sun. Basically what the CTEK system is going to do, it's going to prioritize your house battery and make sure that it's getting at most 20 amps of electricity. And it's going to pull those 20 amps from the solar panel and the alternator. And it prioritizes the solar panel. So like if the solar panel, if it's a really bright day, it's going to pull as much as it can from the solar panel, and then it's going to take whatever's left over off the alternator with a maximum amperage of 20 amps. And it's going to turn that into a nice clean signal to charge your AGM battery, to keep it nice and healthy, to keep it topped off. Whatever's left over on the alternator is then going to go to the starter battery. So you can think of this as sort of like a prioritization computer. The CTEK's going to make sure the house battery gets what it needs. It's going to use a solar panel, and it's going to give a nice strong amperage to charge quickly. The thing that this system is trying to solve is, without this, if you were just trickle charging off of the alternator, your house battery would charge really slowly. And then if you were incorporating a solar panel, the wiring would get all complicated, and it would be very difficult to install. With this, how much amperage your starter battery gets depends on the output of your alternator. So for our alternator, the output is 40 amps. So you can run through like a few different scenarios. Let's say it's like a super sunny day and our solar panel is producing 20 amps of electricity. In that situation, the house battery will take 20 amps from the solar panel, and it will take nothing from the alternator, and the alternator will entirely charge the starter. Now let's say it's a little bit cloudy, and instead of producing 20 amps off the solar panel, we're only producing 10. In that case, the CTEK system is going to pull 10 amps from the solar panel, and then it's going to get the remaining 10 amps off of the alternator, right? And then the remaining 30 amps available from the alternator will go to the starter battery. So that's just sort of like some simple math. If there's absolutely no sun, and you're not getting anything off the solar panel, you're going to be pulling 20 amps off the alternator that's going to the house battery, and 20 amps that's going to the starter battery. And that's, again, for a 40 amp alternator system. You have to check what your alternator is rated for to make sure it kind of fits in all of these things. But that's generally kind of how it works. And one really cool benefit of this system is if you get to a point where, let's say you're sailing and your house battery is full, and say your engine's off, you've been charging it up with solar all day, it's completely filled. At this point, the solar panel will start charging your starter battery if it's not already full. So it's like a nice backup system. In case your starter is depleted, you can always charge it off of the solar panel as well. And another really cool feature is this: as an isolator, you'll never be able to discharge your starter battery from your house battery. So if you leave your house battery hooked up and you leave the lights on all night at anchorage and completely deplete your house battery, it won't affect the starter battery. And so you'll always be able to start your engine. So when compared to the original system, the benefits of this, there's a lot of them. One is it makes it really easy to incorporate a solar panel. The second is you never have to worry about a switch. You never have to make sure, am I switching this the right way or the wrong way? It's a smart charger, so it's making sure that your AGM batteries, which you have for safety because of that off the gases and having them inside the boat where you sleep, that system the computer is making sure that charge is happening intelligently so that your batteries charge quickly and that your batteries last a really long time. So all of these things added together, and just the simplicity of the system, I think it's an awesome solution. And if I can do it, literally anybody can do it. So that's an overview of how it works. Now let's get into the actual installation. The first step in this installation for me was deciding on where to put the solar panel. Since the Horizon is such a small boat, it's only 20 feet long, there isn't a lot of real estate to fit a solar panel, and oftentimes I think solar panels can look kind of ugly. But the solution I came up with that I'm really happy with was using the boom gallows. So on the horizon, not all catboats have a boom gallows, and this is the device that holds the boom up, but the horizon does. And another part that's really cool is there's a navigation light back here that has electrical wire running through back to the battery. So there is already some infrastructure we could take advantage of. And so I built the solar panel to mount right off the back. Here's what it looks like from up top. This is just a basic 100-watt solar panel that I sourced off the internet, and I got one that was specifically the right size to fit within the boom gallows. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I always want to try to avoid drilling more holes in the boat. And so here, these are the existing bolt holes for the boom gallows. And I was able to get a stainless bracket that utilizes the same holes, so I could mount the solar panel on a swinging hinge using the holes that were already there. So I have it mounted here and there, and then I used some stainless, these are like bimini parts from Sailrite. Really, really easy to just mount into these existing boom gallows holders. And the whole thing is quite strong. It's very rigid. I'm actually really excited because the swim platform is here, and now I just have a little bit more stuff to hold when I'm going swimming. So overall, I'm quite happy with how this turned out. It was actually relatively easy. The only difficult part was snaking the solar panels into this hole and then down this tube. And the issue was there was sealant through the hull here, like some 4200, and it was really tough to snake these solar wires through, but with some, just hanging in there and pushing and some persistence, I was able to get them through. So I've got these zip tied and mounted up, and now the nice thing is if this panel ever goes, I can just disattach it here, and we're all ready for a brand new panel if we needed one in the future. I don't have to rerun the wiring. And overall, I think it looks pretty clean. I like the look of it. The main sheet runs forward of the boom gallows, so I don't think we'll have any main sheet issues, but that remains to be seen. I hope the main sheet shouldn't be able to get caught on this on like a jibe or anything because it's so far forward on this boat. I know on a lot of catboats, the boom sits far aft of the stern, and getting caught up on a stern mounted solar panel could definitely be an issue. But for this boat, I don't think it's going to be an issue. And if we ever were going to do long distance trailering, I would probably just unscrew this, fold the panel down, secure it for the drive. But for most, daily trailering, I think I'm just going to leave this up. It's super rigid and strong. So now I'm going to jump in the boat, and we're going to kind of follow along this wire. It goes down here inside the boat, and we're going to show you what the wiring looks like. Now that we're in the boat, just take a look at where this wire goes. We go into this cabinet here, and I apologize, the boat is super messy. And here is the brains of the operation. I haven't cleaned all this up, so excuse kind of the messiness of the wires. I have to zip tie everything and get it all clean. But here's our final configuration. And what I decided to do with installing the CTEK system was, instead of mounting it into the boat, which I certainly could have done, I decided to just mount it in a like a little pretty cheap toolbox that I just got from Home Depot. And my thought process with this was, it was just easier to do. It was cheap. I think that cost like $7. And it's portable. If I ever wanted to move this to another boat, I could very easily just take it out. And most importantly, I couldn't find any real estate in here that felt appropriate to mount this. And it also functions as a drip guard. So if I just open this up, there's a little top, and there is our CTEK system. And I use just little, I don't know, you call these like kind of wire sealant attachments, and drilled little holes through the box. So now the CTEK just lives in here, and you can see it's already powered on, it's functioning. And I don't know, I kind of like this very elegant, kind of easy solution, and it keeps these like live wires away. So one thing that's notable with the Horizon is that this is open into the sleeping area. So if you were to have like a little kid or someone like kind of coming down here, I think it's pretty important to have all your batteries covered, so they can't accidentally zap themselves. So we've got covers for the batteries, and the CTEK system is going to be
all sealed up. So here's the CTEK system. It looks a little messier than it should, but we'll have it cleaned up quick. Here are the solar wires that come from that area back there that I mentioned off the back of the boom gallows. Those were a bit tricky to access. Fiona actually had to do that because she's smaller than me. She could climb in here. And the solar panel comes in right here. And the easiest way to do this, I can just give you guys the wiring diagram, but it's pretty simple. You just have the common ground in the upper right. You have the starter battery and the house battery positives in the lower right, lower left, and you have the solar panel live wire coming in the upper left. All of these are fused with 30 amp fuses, and then they all come in here to our two batteries. We have our starter battery here and our house battery here. And then the only thing I did mount on the boat here is a shunt, and the shunt is for our battery monitor for our house battery so that we can see how much juice we're using, and we can confirm that the solar's charging, the alternator's working, all that good stuff. So a little messy right now, we'll clean it up, but we can see as soon as you plug it in, it's working. Right now you can see this light is on, that's telling us the solar panel is working, even though it's not that sunny and we're in the shade of the mango tree. But well, let's go into the boat and I'll show you what this shunt attaches to. This is the battery monitor that comes with the CTEK unit, and that's arguably my favorite part of this whole thing because it's going to give us a lot more clarity as to how much juice we are using. All right, excuse the mess. So in the horizon up front here is where you have all of your electrical components, and they run through the floor. There's storage under here. They run kind of against this wall through the engine mount and then up to the batteries. So very easy to access everything. And what I did is install, this is the CTEK battery system monitor that comes with the CTEK unit we installed. And this is what we used in our teardrop, and I really, really like it because it basically shows you whether or not you're charging, how much juice you're using, and just helps you avoid over withdrawing your battery. The key reason I wanted this is because I wanted to put fans in the boat, which we have already installed. You may have already seen them. So I installed two fans right here, and I used the existing holes from the winches and built these little kind of, you can see them, they're just out of marine grade starboard little mounts, and I kind of like recessed the bolt holes here because again, I don't like drilling holes through boats, so I like anytime you can use an existing hole, I prefer that. So I think these came out pretty good. I was trying to figure out ways to kind of clean this wiring up. I tried some like stick-on stuff, it didn't really work well, so I'm just going to leave it like that. But wired these two fans together, then down underneath the seat, and then into our panel. And Com-Pac uses this panel with fuses, and it comes with two auxiliary ports that are unused. So you can add devices. So here I have a fan, so I'm going to power on the fan, and you can see, you'll be able to see once I turn this on how much juice we're going. So it's always good here in Florida to have, I'm going to turn it on as high as it can go, both of them. There we go. And these things are amazing because they throw out tons of air, but they draw very little. So we go back here, we can see, if we switch here, we're pulling 0.9 amps for these things. And then you can go to time. We could run these fans for 117 hours at the current rate. So this is the beauty of this system when you're sailing, and if you want to run fans or have lights or charge devices, it just gives you information to make intelligent decisions. So really happy how these came out. I think this is going to make sailing this boat in hot temperatures and sleeping overnight much more comfortable. Fiona made these bug nets that we're going to install next for here, and then in the upper on the forward cabin as well, so we can keep the doors wide open at night without mosquitoes. So yeah, overall, I think this came out great. We don't have much sun right now, so I don't think you're gonna see, when the sun's charging, you will see if you, so right now, oh, we're charging slightly. So it says charging at 0.1 amps. We're in the shade, so I don't expect there to be much charging. But what's nice about this is that the solar panel is always going to keep that house battery trickle charged. So I don't have to run it. I don't have to worry about running the engine all the time. But that is the final test we need to do to make sure that the alternator is wired up right. So what I'm going to do now is bring the hose over and turn on the engine, and then we can come in here and make sure that we're getting a good charge off the alternator. All right, the moment of truth. I have not actually done this yet, so we're doing this together. Good sign. Make sure we're... Well, that's embarrassing. I broke out my voltmeter and I realized that my starter battery has gotten low. And I haven't run the engine for a long time and I haven't charged this up. But I actually have exactly the right tool for that. And it's another product from CTEK that I happen to have. It's called the CTEK, I think it's called the CS Free. And it's basically just like a mobile battery jumper. This is a lithium ion battery. This is a little, I think it's like a 50-watt solar panel and little jumper cables. And it's just a really neat little system that you can keep in your boat or your car in case you get yourself into a pickle like I just did, where I have a dead starter battery. Now, I could just leave the boat in the sun and eventually the house battery would charge up and then it would eventually charge up the starter battery, but I'm a little impatient, and so I'm just gonna set this up, give it a quick jump, and then we'll get that engine started. All right, we've got the terminals on, got the CS Free unit here. Just gonna power it on. And once it's powered on, you just let it charge for a little bit and then it'll indicate when it's ready, and then we should be good to go. All right, take two. Phew! That does it for this video. I hope this information was helpful for you. And if you have any questions about the electrical system we installed, by all means, ask questions in the comments below and I will try to offer helpful responses if I know the answers. And we'll be working on other projects with this boat. We're going to be doing bottom paint pretty soon, looking a little bit rough down under the water line. And we're actually working on designing a new sail for the boat. So stay tuned, we got more videos coming, and thanks so much.